Huh? I've got another patient. Oh my gosh, I've got another patient. Because, what's better after a long day than another patient? I'm fine. What is... I mean, I've only got a consultation. Okay, fine. Send them in. Hello, how do you do? No, it's no bother at all. Obviously, these are initial consultations. This is not going to be a full session. This is more just to establish if there's a rapport, establish if I'm someone you would want to come and see, if, if the likewise is true. Well, to be perfectly frank with you, I am a very highly regarded psychologist, and I get to pick and choose cases, to be perfectly honest. So some people who don't really need so much help, I can refer them on. Likewise, if there are people who I believe to have strong psychological disorders that would be more in line of a psychiatrist, or shall we say stronger help, then I would refer them as well. And really the most interesting people, I suppose, I shouldn't say interesting, it's more, I guess you could think of as a cliche TV show, I'm like the detective that only takes the interesting cases. I am talking far too much about myself in a session that's supposed to be all about you. However, I've already, shall we say, somewhat picked up on the fact that you seem to enjoy me taking the lead here, which is fine. I will ask you to do something very simple, or at least seemingly simple. I'll ask you to sum up in about 10 seconds why you're here. Yes, no. Yes, you see, the problem you're having right now is you're not actually speaking. You're sitting quietly looking at me, and that's not going to help anybody. So I will ask again, and I will sit here until you actually tell me, because this does require you to speak. Unfortunately, I do not have the capacity to help mutes. I wish it were so, but... So again, from the top, 10 seconds, why are you here? I see. Well, that's very interesting. I suppose given that, I suppose I could just tell you what's happening in my head right now. I am deciding how to evaluate you based on what you just told me. And it's very clear to me... Okay. So, the first thing I will ask you is... Are you a fan of any, say, sports teams? Yes, sports teams. The what? The Toronto... When... Is that a hockey team or something? NFL? Huh. I feel like I must have missed that particular expansion. But in any case, are there any notable players on this team to whom you particularly relate or like? There's quite a lot of them. Is there any one in particular who stands out? The quarterback, Bus Gibbous. Bus Gibbous? That's an interesting name. Well, you don't hear people with the name Bus Gibbous every week, I just think it's a particularly unique name. In any case, okay, so... Sure, quarterback, okay. Let's see, what about music? Are there any musicians you particularly like? The pop star, yes. I heard an interesting story about them the other week, that they were apparently hiding in a fan's hotel room, trying to keep a charity appearance a secret. Quite a charming little story. Any others? Ah, I believe that band. So, who's your favorite member? The drummer. Ah, I believe they're touring right now. I'd be quite interested in seeing them live myself. I am also a fan. Anyone else? Any other famous people you have a particular affinity to? Ah, yes, the poet. I have met with him at a conference. Seems like I suppose a somewhat troubled fellow. I suppose many artists are. I don't know. He seemed to be hiding some sort of secret to me. Wasn't quite sure about him. Somehow charming, and yet gives off an air of, maybe involves some strange things. Any others? Believe it or not, I do actually hear those street races from my apartment some nights. They can be quite loud, as you can imagine. Somehow the police never seem to find them, though. I rather suspect there may be one or two members of the force who don't mind so long as they keep out to the never-driven roads. Plus, I do think they kind of manage to have the start and end line fairly secure so that there's no oncoming traffic. I am seeing an interesting pattern develop, which I shall detail to you in a moment. Continue on. Are there any other interesting men you know of or follow? Don't be embarrassed for following professional wrestling. It's a TV show like any other, really. It may not be a sport in the traditional sense we think of sports, but it is storytelling. It's perfectly legitimate to like wrestling characters in the same way you like other television characters. Ah, I haven't kept up with wrestling. I'm guessing that's quite a new wrestler then. Well, I wish them all the best. And poker. Some interesting things you follow. One particular poker player, huh? Interesting. Well, you see, it is very interesting to note these individuals. There are certain commonalities I could point to. And these are men you find interesting, yes? Romantically speaking. Obviously, I'm not asking if you're an obsessed super fan of a musician or sportsman or whatever. I'm merely asking if you are attracted to these men. I see. So tell me a little bit more about yourself outside of this interest in a specific brand of man. Believe me, this is quite a specific list, whether you're fully cognizant of that or not. I'll get onto that in a moment, but for now, tell me why it is you think yourself unlucky in love. Well, one of the interesting points about the series of men you've listed is that they're very eligible, but they're also known to be soft-hearted largely from what is known publicly about them, from the ones I know. I'm fairly confident I could find some similar personality traits in the ones I know less about. And I'm fairly confident the more men I ask you to name, I'm sure you'd even manage to find an assassin with a particular trait here. It seems you are, well, lacking something that you feel these men could provide. I do not necessarily mean that, shall we say, adult activity. Said adult activity can be healthy in relationships, of course. I mean, I would posit that in the best relationships they can be a way of being affectionate towards one another. However, I do not necessarily mean that for you. I think for you, you are more seeking an emotional bond rather than necessarily a physical one. I think it's something you quietly yearn for. I think in day-to-day life you try to hide that, to not let that need show. And I think if you could choose one thing in the world, be it money or fame or whatever, that you would probably choose to have this. Of course, I could be wrong. I very, very rarely am, but there are some people who prove exceptions to the rule. What rule is that? My rule. Oh yes, I am good enough to get my own rules. How can I tell all this so quickly? To be perfectly honest, in a professional aspect, it is not a difficult thing to spot for me. Perhaps others may have difficulty in spotting it. I not so much. Why is that? Years of experience. Well, one of the things I would say to you, or a person with your fears, it is not necessarily an easy thing to find a relationship like this. I would counsel that while it is potentially something missing from your life, if you find it, it will not magically make you happy forever. You may very much fall for someone. You may be madly head over heels for them. And you will have, most likely, a sort of honeymoon period where life is all wonderful just because the giddiness of having met someone is a somewhat overwhelming thing. It's actually quite amusing how often people, they report that one of their biggest struggles is when they are in that sort of state, they find it very, very hard to get anything done. Yet other people manage to get everything done with great efficiency because this buoys them through a certain period of time. In either case, the reality is that will fade. Not the relationship as such, but that particular feeling will fade somewhat. Leave entirely? Depends on the person. Some people still get a real kick out of a partner for pretty much their entire life. Some people, it fades down significantly, but this is not to say that you or they do not care. Please understand that much. What I'm trying to say to you is, although this relationship is a very special thing and should not be taken lightly, and I understand in the age of dating apps and hookup culture that it can feel like no one else out there really wants what you want, but believe me, I could objectively prove thousands and thousands of people do. You'll just have to take my word for it, I suppose. But I think ultimately for you, my advice would be, don't let this one thing that isn't there destroy everything else. Because in my experience of the people I've known who have found meaningful relationships, it truly is somewhat random when they will appear. You can't engineer it into the world. You can't force relationships that don't work to work. You can't. What you can do, work hard to be the person you want to be. I mean that seriously. If you have a dream that is somewhat realistic, if you want to eat the planet Venus, you might struggle. If you want to I don't know. You would have to tell me. But say you wanted to become a yoga instructor or something manageable, then set yourself in that direction. You have spare time? Put an hour a day into doing something to make that dream come true. And every single day, if you do something to make that dream happen, it doesn't have to be 1,000 steps. It's not going to happen easily at once for everybody. You never know when certain things break, but if you want to have a podcast or a YouTube channel, you have to put aside time every single day to try and just do something. Even if you just have an idea, even if you just try to think about things and nothing happens of it, it's still a step in the right direction, whether it feels that way or not. Keep pushing yourself in the direction of your dreams. Just little by little. It's not going to happen overnight necessarily, but it can very easily happen. And it does happen to people, you know? So, going in the direction of a dream, or not even necessarily a dream, just a want, just a way you would like your life to be. Working towards something you feel is meaningful, you feel that you would be good at and that you would enjoy, and that you want to spend your time on. That's one thing. Remembering to enjoy life along the way is another. The number of old people, and by old I mean 70 plus, who I have heard decry that the youth have all this vigor and energy and spend all their time not using it because they're so afraid of the future. The future comes to us all, and it's not that you shouldn't prepare for the future at all, that you should be reckless. But you're much better off accepting that you can't control every little outcome of life, that things will happen that will be bad, that things will also happen that will be good. People tend to notice those less. And that, simply put, if you do all these things and remain open and friendly to new people you meet, you remain open to ways of meeting new people in general, you're willing to strike up a conversation, you're willing to look foolish, you're willing to be turned down, and just keep optimistically putting yourself out for, knowing that eventually you'll meet the right person, that person will take to you the way you want them to. That is ultimately what I would advise for you. And I think you can turn that longing feeling into a positive. You can turn it into motivation to be the person, how should I put it? The person that you would want your significant other to be with. The sort of idea you have in your head of a person who would fulfill your needs and desires of a relationship. Imagine the kind of person you would wish for them to meet if you were not in the equation. You would wish for them to be treated well by, you would wish for them, I don't mean financially necessarily, I mean emotionally, I mean physically. Do you wish them someone who reads well? Do you wish them someone who is optimistic in life? Do you wish them someone who is funny? Whatever it is, whatever qualities you have that you feel that you can steadily get better at, just keep pushing yourself in the direction of the person you would like for them, because that will likely coincide with the person you would most like to be. And with all this said, we are in a consultation, and that is your time up. I will likely be referring you. I don't think you need too much in terms of intense one-on-one sessions. And sorry? It is very gratifying you were starting to like me, but I don't think it's a good idea for me to be the person you necessarily talk to in these cases. Because I, as an internal joke, say I'm experienced with this feeling. I'm too experienced with this feeling. And even in our short conversation here, you strike me as a person that I would be interested in. You do strike me as a person I would date. And so, I don't think it's a good idea for me to be a therapist to you. If I'm attracted to you, it doesn't work. So, in any case, we have to close for the day. I thank you so much for coming in. I hope this was helpful, and my secretary will help you out. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, your body language looks as if you wish to say something. No? You know, I did manage to get through a whole session without saying, and how does that make you feel? Sometimes people are more open to saying something after a joke. Are you sure there's nothing you wanted to say? Sure? Okay. Well, I wish you a nice life. And, okay, goodbye.